Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome to Work Life Leader Live. My name is Julie Cohen. I'm the CEO of Work Life Leader and an executive coach. Work Life Leader is a boutique leadership development, training, and executive coaching company. And it's an honor to have you here for Work Life Leader Live. For those of you who have not joined us previously, this is a conversation that I get to have with smart people about interesting topics on the intersection of work, life, and leadership. I started this video series in August of 2020. If you can remember back then, we were at the beginning, mostly the beginning of the pandemic. And then kept going for a while, and then I took a little break. My last episode of Work Life Leader Live was actually April of 2023. Then some big life events took over for me, and I put this on pause. But I am thrilled to be back, and I have a special guest with me today. So I'm very excited to restart Work Life Leader Live with my colleague and friend, Dale Power. So I'm going to introduce Dale and tell you a little bit about her in 1 second. Hello, Dale.
Hey, Julie. How are you?
I'm good. So let me tell you a little bit about Dale. But before I share information about her, I want to remind you a little bit about how Work Life Leader Live works. Please, whether you're watching us on LinkedIn or Facebook, please let us know you're here. Put in the chat, in the comments that you're here. Introduce yourself. Let us know where you're from. And if you're watching right now, it is Friday, March 14th at 12 p.m. Eastern. Use hashtag live so we know you're here live watching us, okay? And I'll be coming back inviting you to do that and inviting you to put questions and comments in the comments, and I will be reading them and responding to them, and Dale will be responding to them live, real time. So with that, let me introduce Dale. Dale's journey to becoming a champion of courage is anything but conventional. She founded several businesses, including a catering company, Clowning Around, a children's entertainment business, and Big Shoes Marketing, a branding consultancy, before launching Share Your Courage. She is also the author of Learning Problems, Where to Find Help, and a founding member of the Specialists of Schools Association. Today, Dale serves as a guide to individuals and organizations seeking to stay innovative, unleash their creativity, and build vibrant lives and communities. So again, Dale, oh my goodness, sorry. I want to welcome you to our conversation.
Thanks. Thank you.
So our topic for today is about courage. It's called The Courageous Workplace, a Foundation for Innovation. And Dale's going to be sharing with us her expertise and insight on this topic of why it's important. For those of you who've watched before, I always like to start our conversations with an icebreaker. And today's icebreaker is a question for Dale. Could you share a time when you were courageous and how did it feel?
Yeah, I've kind of an interesting resume on courage, but one of the really outstanding times when it took a lot of courage was starting my marketing business, because I had suddenly become a major primary breadwinner in my family, and I was really up against it, and so I did Outward Bound at not a young age. I did it 20 years ago. In Maine. It was sailing, rock climbing, rappelling, and high ropes. And if you don't know what Outward Bound is, it's an exterior and interior challenge where you face your biggest fears, physically sometimes, and certainly mentally, because there was a hurricane coming up the coast in addition, which was not planned. And you always find, even though you're very well prepared, you always find the place where you find your biggest fear and you get to face it.
Wow. Wow. That is huge.
Hmm.
I remember doing a ropes course many, many years ago, and it was probably one of the scariest things I ever did. So that's awesome. Well, thank you, Gail. Dale, I don't know why I keep calling you Gail. I'm
It's
sorry.
okay. Don't worry. You're not alone.
I have your name right in front of me. So with that, I want to reintroduce you and invite some of our listeners and viewers to share a time when they were courageous, and then I'm going to share mine. So give you time to think. I see we have one of our guests. Hi, Jamie Craig. She's the owner of Savvy HR Consulting. So, and she lives near Houston. So I'm glad to see you here. And again, we're talking about the courageous workplace, a foundation for innovation. And I'm here with Dale Power, who's a chief encouragement officer. And I'm going to share, so the icebreaker that we're talking about is a time when you were courageous and what it felt like. So I'm going to share one for me that I feel was when I was courageous. It was a scary situation. It was many years ago before I started my own business, which was 25 years ago. It was my previous job. And I had a boss that I felt was not treating me fairly and equitably. And unfortunately, he knew that. And one day he called me into his office. There were multiple times I felt like he was kind of sabotaging my success, taking some credit for my work. And he didn't like sometimes the way I was speaking up. And he called me into his office. He invited me to sit on a chair to talk to me because he said he was concerned about some of my work. And then he went and shut his door, the office door, and then he sat on his desk facing me, very close to me. So I was sitting down. He was sitting on a desk above me, looking down on me, and shut the door. And I immediately felt extremely uncomfortable. So I was pretty young back then. I think I was maybe 30. And I stood up and I said, I'm not comfortable with this conversation with the door shut. So I said, could you please either open the door or invite someone else in? And he did. He opened the door and we had the conversation. And I remained standing while he was sitting at the desk because I felt it was like a power move. Mm-hmm. And it was probably the first courageous thing I really ever did in the workplace. But I think because I felt so threatened by this, I just did it. So I was scared, but I kind of got to the place where I just said, well, if I don't do it, I'm going to, what I don't even know why I did it. It just happened. So that was my example of courage. So tell me your thoughts on that. How do you decipher that?
I think that's a really good instance of needing courage in the workplace. I think there's so many times when, it's people don't think about courage in the workplace. They think about courage as, going into battle or trying out for the Olympics. But the truth of it is standing up in a meeting, standing up for yourself, standing up for somebody else, taking an idea out and describing it to a group of people that are thinking very conventionally, that all takes courage. And that happens every day in the workplace.
Yeah. So I want to start, the Merriam-Webster dictionary defines courage as mental or moral strength to venture, persevere, and withstand danger or difficulty. And like you just mentioned, we often think of courage as something heroic. So my first question is, how do you define courage?
I would say the way I define it, and this definition changes every so often, but I would say it's the mental or moral strength to push through, persevere, and withstand a sense of fear, difficulty, or danger.
Yeah.
Because a lot of that's our perception You know that old acronym of fear,
Yes.
false evidence appearing real?
Oh, I didn't know that. Say
You
that
haven't
again.
heard that? Yeah, it's a
No.
good one, isn't it?
Can you say that again slower
Yeah,
so everybody?
sorry. It's fear as an acronym would
Yes.
stand for false evidence appearing real,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That,
which
that
is
makes sense.
exactly what it is. Because
Right.
most of the fear we have is based on assumption
Right.
that's usually wrong.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go a little deeper. Why do we need courage at work?
Okay, well, if you look at the workplace right now, what do you think is the biggest um, disruptor in the workplace right now?
Oh, I think there's a lot. Disruptor. Well, AI, I think is
Yeah,
going to be a
that's a
disruptor.
perfect example. So
Okay.
AI is going to change, incredibly change manufacturing. I don't even think we know all the things it's going to change, but it sort of feels to me like it's going to be bigger than the internet.
Hmm.
And it is going. And you know how we deal with change? We immediately get fearful, right? And want to stay right where we are. So I think that's the big one. Um, but the ability to and with that goes the need for innovation and creativity, and that's going to be a premium product in the coming years because AI can synthesize data. It probably will be able to create down the road, but it doesn't have the creativity. It can present and synthesize things, but the creative ideas are still in our realm. And
Yeah.
so that's going to be a big, there's going to be a lot of demand for that, I think.
Yeah. So I'm going to come back to you and ask how do we use courage or create courage to address some of these issues? But I have some comments. Um, so I think this is Jamie said a courageous moment. Left a corporate career in D.C. and moved to Texas to start a new life. And 3 weeks later, Hurricane Harvey hit, and my new to me home flooded. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, so that's taking a big leap, and then um, dealing with consequences that you never expected.
Yes.
Um,
And that's what happens. I mean, there's that intersection of life and work of, you make this great life decision and possibly it's part of it's a work decision. And then all of a sudden a hurricane comes along and blows up your life. And you need courage in both your personal and your work life.
right, right. We also have another comment on things that are disruptors, and I think this would have been the other one of the. I think there's a bunch of disruptors. I
Oh yeah,
mentioned.
I do too.
Um, but another one that was mentioned, a lot of people feeling unsafe due to DEI measures being retracted.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say spot on that one. Also, along with that, um, a lot of people are being called back into the office full time who may have
Yes.
not, who may have made life changes and moved and travel and are being required to revisit how they want to, work and live.
That's very controversial. I got 54,000 hits on a post I wrote about that.
Yeah, yeah.
That was huge.
Yeah. So let's talk about, in these situations, you how do we build courage? How do we address some of these situations in a courageous way?
Right. Well, the way I've looked at it, because I have had a lot of both life and personal experiences in having my courage tested, is I started to think about this differently because right now it seems like companies are so willing to just get an app or try to make people more productive, and in the more we are using technology, the further away, the less connection we have with each other, I think. It's good. I mean, it's a lot of it's very efficient, but it doesn't hold us away from our personal connections. So I started really looking at this over a long period of time, not just recently. This has been about 25 or 30 years in the making. And what I realized is courage breaks down into 6 components: awareness, listening, curiosity, appreciation, connectedness, and playfulness. And awareness is something that if you've been in a supermarket any time, really in the last few years, and you see somebody right in the middle of the aisle that is completely unaware that you would like to get by, and they do not have any consciousness of you, you know that awareness is probably something that could be built pretty widely in our whole population. And what goes into that is there are levels of awareness to practice. So judgment is a part of awareness. Assumption is a part of awareness. Um, Presence is a part of awareness. And I've developed a framework that is works individually. It's an experiential framework, but it works with the individual first, and then it's shared with a group. So you not only get personal insight and imprinting on your own consciousness, but then you get to share with a group and find out everyone's in 7th grade.
Right. Right. Not for most of us, 7th grade was not a time where we were very courageous.
Correct. Everybody's afraid, and I mean, really, honestly, everybody worries about a lot of the same things, even if they don't show it.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure.
So I'm going to come back to, I want to reintroduce you. I'm speaking with Dale Power, who is the Chief Encouragement Officer of Share Your Courage, is the name of her organization. And we're talking about the Courageous Workplace, a foundation for innovation. Please, please put any questions or comments you have around this topic, or questions for Dale, in the chat box, and we will answer them live. If you're watching live, it is Friday, March 14th, a little after noon Eastern. And we love your feedback and comments, and we want to answer questions and hear your thoughts on courage, how you experience courage, and how you facilitate courage in others at work. So I guess maybe that's, you mentioned, awareness. I didn't catch all 6 of those components of courage. So tell me, besides awareness, can you give me one more, and we'll talk about it?
Sure. I would say curiosity, because people, curiosity and playfulness. I'll give you 2. Curiosity is, what I mean by that is the ability and the art of asking deeper questions. So I'll give you an example that I heard yesterday, and I thought it was such a profoundly good question. Somebody said, "When did you decide who you were, and have you updated that definition?"
So, decide who you were. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, kind of an interesting question.
Yeah.
But when you ask questions, and that might not be an appropriate question in the workplace, but when you ask deeper questions, and also questions that are not typical, you get people to, get their attention. Mm-hmm. And so you grab their listening, and B, you're already going into a deeper conversation. And so these all weave together. Presence starts to weave in there too.
Yeah.
The playfulness aspect of that is, how when you're standing in a Starbucks line and somebody says, "How are you?" and everybody goes, "Fine, good, whatever, well," if you could find a different response that would be more playful, you will not only engage the person in front of you, you might engage a few other people, because it's just fun. And people really want to play, but they need to be given permission to play. And playfulness is great in the workplace. Not as an only kind of thing, but it is essential to teams really being able to glue together.
So what are some of the outcomes of an individual being courageous at work?
Well, when you build your courage, I mean, you're much less daunted by any challenges that come up. You're looking, now you're starting to maybe see more opportunities. Your performance, the research shows the performance goes way up and retention goes up, as well as a sense of engagement and purpose. And those are all the things you probably know this. Gallup did a huge, long study, and they come out with it every year. And one of the reasons, the main reason people quit jobs is because they aren't appreciated. And, nobody's asking anybody to go overboard and, do anything silly. But at the same time, the kinds of techniques, like they're sending an email or they're sending some kind of corporate gift thing that, is just, there's nothing personal about it.
Right. Right. Okay. That's great. So just to reintroduce, this is Work Life Leader Live. You're watching a discussion with Dale Power, and we're talking about the courageous workplace, a foundation for innovation. So what gets in the way of being courageous?
Oh, good question. Well, obviously fear.
Okay.
I think assumptions are a huge roadblock to overcoming fear because, for instance, you're in a conversation and somebody makes a comment and you take it in a personal way and they didn't mean anything by it. They just weren't thinking. And all of a sudden, that assumption is thrown up a roadblock because now you're defensive. And so that's a big one. Procrastination, I equate with fear. I think procrastination is just a mask for fear. And then the last one would be being really comfortable. Even in an uncomfortable situation, you think of all the people we've known in our lives that have stayed married and they're in terrible marriages. If that's a personal example, but Adam Grant did a podcast or a post on LinkedIn 5 times last year on toxic workplaces, and he got roughly 300,000 comments. There are a lot of people that are in very uncomfortable circumstances.
Yeah.
That would rather stay than do something different.
Yeah. Yeah. So just as we're talking, so it sounds like the opposite of courage is fear.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, so how do we assess if we have a courage gap, either personally or in a work environment? Is there? I mean, I know you have an assessment,
Yeah.
but like if we just wanted to do our own, are there areas that I'm not showing courage? Like, what do I need to think about?
Well, I think you need to think about, what do you really, what do you really want? And that is a really loaded statement or question because most people can tell you 10 things they don't want.
Right.
They have a hard time telling you what they do want. So that is number one, is figuring out what you want. And then figuring out how long you wanted that and seeing what kind of time gap there is there.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's pause and ask our participants, are there places where in your work or in your life where being more courageous might be an asset or it's something you want to develop? I'd love to hear about specific situations and we can bring Dale into Dale. Oh my God, forgive me. Dale into the conversation. I don't know any Gales.
I'm going to tutor you after this.
Yeah, I think so. We'd love to hear if you have any specific situations where you need to build up your courage muscles, and Dale can respond. So please put in the chat box. We have a new comment. First of all, I want to say hi to Melanie. I see you're here. It's great to have you here. Let us know where you're coming from, and it's great that you're here live. So Melanie wrote, Jamie Craig, this is huge for women of color. The workplace feels incredibly unsafe now. It breeds fear and silence because the clock has been turned back. Yes. And my guess, Melanie, and maybe you can respond to me, and Dale, if you want to add anything, it probably feels like it's difficult to have courage in an environment in which it feels like your presence is not being welcomed and some of your power is being diminished or taken away. Any comments on that, Dale?
Yeah, I would say you can't let that stop you. Then you start developing courage on the outside, outside your workplace, or taking it in little tiny steps, because that's something you can't live with. I had a young engineer from Intel the other day who was 26 years old. He's 6'3" or 4", and and just got out of Berkeley about a year or two ago, and he's a star. And he said, "I am terrified to talk in meetings." And he said, "What should I do?" And I said, "Well, I mean, there would be some specific things that I'd love to talk to you about, but the main thing is once you have a few of those things, then practice. Start practicing, and practice in small ways. You don't have to practice in upsetting the apple cart, but you practice with yourself, and you practice outside work, and you practice inside work."
Yeah, and I think one of the issues, Melanie, you beat me to it. I think there is a challenging situation on the dynamic around DEI issues. As Melanie just stated, women of color can lose our job for speaking up, and so I think there is this very precarious situation. Um, you Some people are being put in as their voices are being silenced. So, I mean, I think that's a really interesting topic. And Dale, I don't know, Dale, if this is outside of your area,
A little outside of my
your scope. So I don't want to put you on the spot,
right.
but I think there may be a follow up conversation where I can speak to with some other folks about what does it mean to be in an environment where your power and courage is being taken away from you, because I think that is what I believe Melanie's talking about.
I will speak to one thing on that, and that is the one thing you can do with that. And I learned this when I was a clown, and that is you can every day you can before you go into work sit in your car for a few minutes before you go in and center your energy in your heart and just keep that energy and the image of that energy strong. And you're going to be surprised how incredibly powerful that is. And that isn't, no one's going to see that, but energy is an enormous thing you can play with.
Right. So you're talking about when you don't have, when others are taking your power away to focus
when it
on
feels like others are taking your power away.
Right.
They may or may not be. But
well, unfortunately, I think in this situation they actually are. So I don't want to minimize that. I do think
I don't, not minimizing it at all.
Yeah.
But that is, I learned that very early in my career when I was running clowning around, and it was one of the most useful skills I ever learned.
Okay, great, thank you. So a couple more questions. Is there an activity or an exercise? You've shared a couple. Anything else you wanted to talk about how do we develop courage or help develop it in others?
Okay, well, I mean, I think you help develop it in others by showing it, by modeling it, honestly, and by asking good questions, asking people, sometimes challenging an assumption gently that may be just very fear-based, but I think you have to really learn how to develop it yourself. And there's no real guidebook, but I'll tell you one of the quick exercise I do around awareness with people is each one is done individually. And the first one in awareness that I do is when people are going to the supermarket, when you're going to spend more than 5 minutes in there, on your right hand, before you walk in the door, on your right hand, you're going to count the number of times you judge yourself. And that includes, oh, I forgot the bags to bring in. Okay. And on your left hand, you're going to count the number of times you judge other people. And you're going to run out of fingers. And you're going to come back, and there will be some questions I would ask you to answer, very short questions. But that starts to give you an idea of how often we judge both ourselves and other people. And judgment is like a big stop sign for conversation. And once you start being aware of that, then you start using the other tools to develop the conversation better.
Okay. So as we approach the end of our conversation, I want to just invite anyone who's watching to share any additional questions or comments before we wrap up. But I always like to ask our guests, what are the big rocks? What are the main points you want people to take away?
Okay. I think the first one is courage can be built. It is not something you can learn it. It is not something you're born with. And when you learn it, when leaders learn these things and then they teach their teams, performance goes skyrocketing up, engagement goes up, and it makes everybody have so much better time working together because people understand each other's strengths and they understand how to support each other. So, and I think that it's important for there to be a sense of purpose in work, and that's kind of the it of it, really.
Yeah. And I just want to, we have a couple, I see another post that I want to, Kelly Culliver. Hi, Kelly. She said challenging assumptions gently is invaluable, um, which I see you nodding your head, Dale.
Yeah, yeah. You've got to be you've got to be gentle, and this as a coach. You preface you preface things you're going to say that might land hard. You don't just shoot and ready, fire, aim, right?
Well, I'm not again. So for me personally, from a style type, that's not something I do regularly. But I let people know, kind of, and maybe this is because I've been in the world of work for a lot of years.
Mhm.
Maybe when I was younger, I prefaced things more, but I can be both polite and direct at the same
Oh,
time.
I can too, and I'm not saying that. I'm
Yeah,
saying things like, what I'm gonna ask you something, but it might land hard.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's all. Just to give them a little like 5 second warning,
Right, right. Yeah, yeah.
because
I
you
get
don't know how prickly anybody is. You don't know what their life is. You don't know what they're going through at home. You don't know that their mother just died or their son was in an accident. I mean, you just don't know what's going
right,
on.
right,
You
right.
can't possibly know.
So any other final information you want people to take away before I ask you how others can get in touch with you?
No, I think that's good. I mean, maybe just the courage quiz, but
Yeah, yeah. So Dale's gonna just why don't you let listeners who want to talk more with you
okay,
directly about courage, how they can reach you. Dale did talk about um, with me in advance that she has a courage quiz that she's happy to share. So if you want to let people know how to reach you and how to get the courage quiz.
sure. My email is, I think Julie's going to share my email, but it's Dale at Share Your Courage, DALE.
Yes, not
Um,
Gail.
I'm one of those names. If people don't call me Gail, then they add an S to my power. So it's bizarre. But it's Dale at Share Your Courage, and there's an individual courage quiz for people that don't feel that they need it in an organization, but they want to build their own courage. And then there's a corporate company quiz where if you're leading an organization or if you're a team leader, because if you can teach your team, if you can learn this and then teach your team, it's magic.
Yeah. And so I see. Thank you. I will put after this recording goes up on LinkedIn in the comments stream. I will put Dale's email so you can reach out to her directly if you want to get that quiz or ask her any questions or stay in touch. Also put a link to her website. Final comments. Kelly Culliver mentioned radical candor with kindness. And someone did ask earlier, you look so familiar. Did you work for Lockheed Martin?
No,
No. Okay. Do
I,
you
I have a face that looks familiar to many people.
Well, I want to thank you, Dale Power, of
Julie
Share Your
Collins.
Courage, for joining me and being my first guest back as we relaunch Work Life Leader Live. I am open and love feedback and comments and topics you're interested in hearing me talk with interesting people. And if you're an interesting person who has expertise in an area on the intersection of work life and leadership, I'd love for you to reach out to me and we can talk first offline to see if it makes sense for us to set up another Work Life Leader Live. You can always reach me, Julie at worklifeleader.com. And please join us next time. And we'll thank you, Dale, and thank you everyone who joined us live. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Take good
Thanks so
care.
much. Thanks, Julie.